Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Was Neglected and Become Spartan Warrior special movie. Before we start, please go support broly Legendary02 in the black for writing that awesome fanfic. Now let's begin. Prologue. Issei narrates. Hello, I am Issei, general of the great Spartan army and right hand of the great Spartan king Leonidas Mir, king and my brother in arms, but I was not always what you see read now. Before I was a demon, servant of the great Ria's Gremory, heir to the Gremory clan. You may wonder why I say before. Well, I decided to withdraw from that stupid clan and get away from the supernatural, since they never valued my efforts, even though I was the one who did everything, and not my brother Ryu. Flashback. Normal narration. A great battle could be seen at Kuo Academy, in which the Gremory clan was fighting against the most insane cadre of Grigory Kakabiel. Kakabiel. Give up, you will never be able to defeat me, he said while seeing the Gremory clan in a very bad state. Rias. Jay, we will never give up, Koka. He couldn't finish as Kakabiel created a large air current, leaving almost everyone unconscious except Issei. Kakabiel. Wow, boy, it shows that you are very resistant, he said with arrogance. Issei. I will never give up as long as my heart can still breathe, he said holding a sword. Thus Kakabiel and Issei began to exchange cuts and thrusts at great speed, while the Gremory clan was still unconscious, except for Ryu, who was getting up watching the combat, while an arrogant smile was visible on his face. Kakabiel. You're quite skilled, child, he said, blocking Issei's thrust. It's a pity that this ends here. Issei. I say the same, Kakabiel, he said, clashing his sword with Kakabiel's spear of light. Thus both began to struggle, but little by little Issei was gaining ground until a dragon shot collided with them, leaving Issei injured and Kakabiel knocked out. Rias. Ah, what happened? He asked as he recovered only to see Kakabiel lying on the ground and Ryu with his foot on his head. Well done, Ryu. Keno. You're genius, Ryu-kun. Tiba. Good job. Ryu. Hahaha, I'm the strongest Serkyuutei, he said with arrogance. Ha, stupid Issei, you're just a nuisance, he said to an Issei who was trying to stay standing. Issei. Damn idiot, you could have killed me with that attack, he said very annoyed. Rias. You're nothing more than a nuisance, Hyoudou. Asia and Kaneko. You are useless, they said with contempt. Issei just looked down while everyone claimed and humiliated him, and all thanks to Ryu. Then flashback, narrates Issei. Since then I tried to move forward, but more and more people supported Ryu while I remained as his shadow. The only ones who supported me were Sona, Tsubaki and Zeus, leader of the Greek faction. After the battle against Trixa, I decided to get away from the supernatural to be able to make my life. I never imagined what destiny had in store for me. The Chaos Brigade had returned with much greater strength than before, and with more allies, such as our mortal enemies the Persians, who were commanded by the terrible King Xerxes the God King. It was also said that they had the original daughter of the Lucifer in his favor, the unstoppable Karina, the only demon who was capable of defeating the celestial dragons without any problem. At this moment we are preparing to fight the Persians with our King Leonidas. It is time to show those idiots what we are capable of, the Spartans. It is time for me to show what I can be capable of in order to protect my brothers and my people. By Spartan. Normal narration. The war came to Greece, involving the bravest and most honorable warriors that can exist in the human world. It is time for Issei to show who he is now and finally confront his past in order to ensure his future. Chapter 1. Arena narrates. I still remember my childhood, the beautiful moments I spent with Issei when we were just children, the times we played together, his way of being, how I had fallen in love with him. To tell the truth, he was the best thing that could have happened to me in my life. Then why was he so cruel to him if it was the best thing in my life? Well, when I returned to Kuo to stop Kakabiel, I was very badly injured, and when I woke up they had told me that Ryu was the one who had defeated him, while Issei was only in the way. At first I didn't believe it, but as time went by and I kept hearing those things from you, I began to believe them, to the point of treating you the same or worse. I still remember that time when I ruined what could be the only opportunity for my happiness. Flashback. Normal narration. Issei could be seen sitting on a bench in the park where Issei had had his date with Rainer, and then he sees his childhood friend Irina arrive. Issei. Hello Irina, thank you for coming, she said, something nervous. Irina. Tell me what you want to say. I ask, a little angry. Issei. Well Irina, since we were children I have had feelings for you. You are pretty, hot and bold, and I wanted to ask you if you would like to be my girlfriend. Irina just lowered her head while her hair covered her eyes, only to then slap Issei, who caught him very off guard. Irina. Stop dreaming, I would never be the girlfriend of a trash like you. I prefer to be with Ryu instead of being with you, trash. Hearing those words, Issei felt his heart break as he watched Irina leave without caring at all about the brunette. Then flashback. Irina narrates. Since then I stopped seeing you as my friend and I only approached Ryu. After knowing that you left I didn't care, and I just thought that there would be no more obstacles. How stupid I was to think that, since one day I was walking in the park and by fate I saw Ryu talking with his friends. Flashback. You could see Irina walking through the streets of Kuo while she had some bags that had clothes and makeup. She was humming a song until she saw two with her friends talking about something, and out of pure curiosity, she decided to come closer to find out what they were talking about. Friend 1. And how are you doing with those Ryu beauties? Ryu. Great, I have it in the palm of my hand, even stupid Irina. Friend 2. But maybe she wasn't in love with your stupid brother. Ryu. Yes, she was harder to fool, but I just had to wait and increase my lies, hahaha. When Irina heard that, she just shed several tears and ran out of there. When she got to her apartment, the first thing she did was lock herself in her room and cry without any consolidation. Irina. Why? Why did I have to believe those things? Why? She screamed while she lamented for hurting her true love. Then flashback. Irina narrates. Since then I forgot about Ryu, and I focused on looking for you so I could give you my love, but unfortunately I didn't find you. I also took it upon myself to tell everyone the truth about Ryu. At first they didn't want to believe me, but in the end I managed to convince thanks to Zu-sama, who showed my memories, thus giving that bastard a good punishment by prohibiting him from accessing any faction and also cancelling his program. Now we are all dedicated to looking for you and your forgiveness, except Sona, Tsubaki and Zeus, who told us that we would leave you alone. But I'm not going to let you go, Issei. I made a mistake, and I'm not going to give up until I find you, and you agree to be my boyfriend and fiancé. Present-day normal narration. The leaders of the allied factions together with their clans, the dragon gods and the celestial dragons, could be seen in a meeting room discussing the topic of the Chaos Brigade and their new allies the Persians. Xerxes. We must do something, this is already out of control, he said worried. Isaka. Xerxes is right, if we continue like this will end soon and not for the better. Ryu. Why don't you just attack and that's it? Azazel. You better shut up, stupid, because of your lies we are in this situation. Michael. Because of you, Issei left, the only one who knows the spell to keep Trixa locked up, and now that he disappeared, cutting all ties he has with us, the seal he put to keep Trixa is weakening, and all because of you. Ryu. Please, I am the Serkyuutei and… Tiba. Shut up, I shout, grabbing him by the collar of his shirt. You lied to us, you made us despise Issei, my friend. Everyone just hung their heads, while the Gremory only lamented for having hurt the minor brunette so much, but the most affected was Irina. While Zeus only had a smile on his face to see the state of his allies as well as Tsubaki and Sona. Meanwhile, in an ancient city, several men wearing Greek armor were moving while they were attacked by several Persian warriors. King Leonidas, the troops are ready to march, he said to a black-haired man who was wearing armor with a white cape. Leonidas. Perfect, it's time to fight those bastards, he said seriously while the man in armor only nodded to leave. Issei, he said, drawing the attention of the one already identified as Issei. Remember not to have so much fun. The brunette only nodded while he put on his helmet and went out onto the battlefield to start the fight to protect the town from him. Episode 2. Sparta. You could see many men gathered in a large area while they waited for their king's orders, but among them stood a chestnut tree who had many scars on his body. This boy was Issei Hyoudou, who had experienced the art of war after having fled from Kuo and given his heart to Sparta. In front of him was his king and best friend Leonidas, who was wearing a red cape, helmet and gold shield ready to fight alongside his people. Leonidas. Spartans, I heard me very well, this day we not only face Persian men, but also supernatural beings willing to leave our home reduced to ashes, he said while he wielded his sword and shielded. Now, tell me who is willing to fall for your home. Leonidas. For Sparta, he shouted, raising his sword. Everyone began to head quickly to the eastern area of the city, where several enemies were trying to destroy the city. Leonidas, seeing how Issei was also heading to that place, stopped him. Leonidas. Issei, wait, he shouted, drawing the brunette's attention. Issei. What's wrong, my king? Leonidas. I want you and a group of men to go to the southern part of the city. Issei. Why? Leonidas. Enemy towers have been seen approaching the city and they need your help to contain the enemy forces. Issei. I understand, he said and then pointed to a group. You with me, let's go fast. Saying that, the chestnut tree along with his group headed to the southern area of the city, while Leonidas headed to the eastern area to help his people. Issei ran for almost 30 minutes with his brothers until they reached the southern area, seeing several Spartan warriors fighting with bravery and honor against many Persians, but there were also fallen angels and renegade demons. The brunette only became enraged when he saw those beings, and without thinking once, he decided to help his brothers. Underworld meeting room, there were all the leaders, dragon gods, the Gremory clans, Citri, Phoenix, Baal, Aegir's the celestial dragons, Vali's team and the Hyoudou family gathered together, discussing the issue of the Chaos Brigade, and a beam of golden light appeared in front of them. They thought it was an attack from the Chaos Brigade, but when it dissipated they saw that it was only the messenger god Hermes. Hermes. Finally I find you, Zeus, he said somewhat agitated. Zeus. What's wrong for you to come like this, Hermes? He asked something seriously. Hermes. The Chaos Brigade has made its move. Michael. What do you mean by that, Hermes? Don't know. Hermes? They are attacking Sparta, he said without further ado. Everyone didn't understand why he said that, but Zeus knew why the Chaos Brigade decided to try to take Greece. Isaka. But why are they attacking Sparta? I asked, very confused. Zeus. I think I know why, he said seriously. Azazel. Do you know something that we don't? Office. You better explain to us what Zeus Exigio is going through. Zeus. I'd rather show them than explain it. As he said that, lightning struck the table and began to show images of Sparta being attacked by the Chaos Brigade and the Persians. Everyone was very impressed as they were seeing how the Spartans were fighting with great bravery against the Persians and members of the Chaos Brigade. Auden. This is impossible, he said, very shocked. Rias. How can those simple humans stand up to the Chaos Brigade? Zeus. If only they knew more about humanity, he said with a smile. Sona. What does Zeusama mean? Zeus. It is true that humanity does not have the same power as us, he said, drawing everyone's attention. That is why they do the impossible to surpass themselves and do things that we could not do. In a few words, the race human is much better than any other. When he said that, everyone was impressed since Zeus was saying that humans were better than all of them, but a certain brunette just started laughing because of that. Ryu. Ha 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 ha, seriously? You think such insignificant beings can be better than me, he said arrogantly. Zeus. No, I don't think so. I know, he said seriously, bothering Ryu. Why don't we better see your brother, he said with a smile. Ryu. Wait, you knew where my son was all this time? Ryu. And why hadn't you told us? Zeus. He told me to never tell anyone, besides he is no longer the same. Rias. What do you mean? Zeus. Look for yourselves. When saying that, everyone looked again at the image of the battle that was being fought in Sparta, more specifically in a slightly large area where there were some Spartans trying to push back many Persians and members of the Chaos Brigade, the leaders along with the gods. Dragons, Celestials, the Gremory clans, Baal, Ageres, Citri, Vali's team and the Hyoudou thought that they were not going to endure anymore, while Zeus, Hermes, Sabaki and Sona admired the bravery and courage of those warriors, but in that they see that more warriors were emerging from the houses and hallways of the Spartan buildings, but among all of them, one stood out who was wearing a black cape and had several battle marks on his body. Everyone stared at the man who was the architect who was leading the men who had arrived at the combat zone. After spending a couple of minutes looking at him, they were finally able to recognize him. Everyone. Issei. They asked in amazement. Azazel. Is that really Issei? Zeus. That's right, but the Spartans decided to call him something else, he said, drawing everyone's attention. They call him Themistocles, that's what his brothers decided to call him. Everyone was with their mouths on the ground, but then they saw how Issei and his Spartan brothers began to fight, giving them a small sample of the savage Spartan combat. The Spartans were beginning to gain ground against the Persians and the Chaos Brigade, something that had impressed the supernatural beings and made Zeus and Hermes very happy. The strength of these warriors was impressive, and they also supported each other, since when one fell he was immediately helped by the other, making his attacker or attackers retreat. It was also seen that they implanted fear during the battle, since they saw that some tried to flee without any result. But what shocked them the most was his tremendous strength, since they saw how a Spartan carrying an axe killed a fallen angel by passing through his magical shield as if it were nothing. But among all of them, the one who stood out the most in the battle was Issei, since he had a perfect balance of strength, speed and agility. He killed a Persian by cutting his neck, he pushed a renegade with his shield, and then gave a cut in the stomach of a fallen man. He blocked an attack with his shield and another with his sword, and then killed the one he blocked with his sword by decapitating him, and in one quick movement, he hit a fallen man in the mouth of the stomach with the edge of his shield. He cut the chest of a Persian and decapitated a renegade with great speed, locked a spear of light and made a vertical cut upwards, killing a fallen man, and with a turn on his own axis, he blocked the attack of a Persian and made a cut horizontally to a renegade and then make another turn blocking the spear of a fallen man and stabbing the Persian. He grabbed the fallen man and gave him a headbutt. He began to advance, but another fallen man appeared and tried to block Issei's attack with his spear, but as if it were crystal broke it as if it were nothing with his sword and giving it a horizontal cut. Everyone at the meeting was very impressed to see that, but more Kiba, Arthur and Zenobia, since they saw that his movements with the sword were much better than theirs. In short, they saw that Issei was a prodigy in the art of the sword. But Irina only saw the brunette with sadness, since when she saw the brunette's eyes, she no longer found the lover affection that he showed. They only showed fire and ferocity, the smile that illuminated his face. So much was changed to that of a calculating and cold warrior. In short, she was no longer seeing the kind and loving boy she fell in love with. Now she only saw a fierce warrior born for battles and willing to give his life for his own if necessary. Issei was killing and pushed a Persian with his shield, causing him to fall into the void, while the renegade tried to cut him with a sword, but the brunette turned quickly, causing the sword to collide with his helmet. Issei hit the renegade in the neck with the edge. of his shield causing a cut killing him, then he made a vertical cut downwards killing a fallen man, then he looked to the side observing some large towers approaching the city. Issei. Listen everyone he shouted, drawing the attention of the Spartans, who had just finished killing the last enemies left in the area. Enemy towers are arriving, everyone in defense formation. Shouting that, all the Spartans who were there formed up and put their shields in front of Issei, while they positioned their spears on one side of her shields. Ice brothers, fight for your families, but above all, fight for your home, he shouted while footsteps could be heard from the towers. Fight for Sparta. When he shouted that from the towers, many Persians came out ready to take the city, while Issei and her brothers remained in their defensive positions to protect their beloved city. Chapter 3. The Spartans were firm and ready to receive their unwanted guests. The Persians came out of the towers, showing that they were outnumbered, in addition to being accompanied by many members of the Chaos Brigade. Everyone in the room of the Grimoire house was very shocked. Seeing such a large number in front of the Spartans, who were at least 300. Persian. Spartans, surrender and deliver your weapons, he ordered as he stood in front of the great army. Everyone in Grimoire Castle except Zeus, Hermes, Sona and Tsubaki thought that they were going to surrender since they were at a numerical disadvantage, but Zeus and Hermes knew that the greatest glory of a Spartan, the greatest triumph that can come to have, is to die on the battlefield with the sole objective of protecting their family and nation. Then they see how a spear flies from the Spartans and sticks into the Persian's chest, killing him. The mysticals Issei, idiots, he shouted while he grabbed another spear, implying that he was the one who threw it. Come for them, he shouted, putting himself on guard with his brothers. At that, some Persians sounded war horns while the Persians and the Chaos Brigade went to attack. The Spartans did not care at all about the numerical superiority they had. If they were going to die, they would do so protecting their city, but from something they were very sure that they would not die that day. Spartan 1. Quiet. The mysticals. Never stop, he said while looking with great hatred at his enemies, but take away their entire strength. Spartan 1. Resist. Saying that, the Persians and the Chaos Brigade crashed into their shields, trying to make them retreat. Some members of the brigade tried to fly over them to attack them, but they were knocked down by the Spartans behind them, who threw their arrows and spears at them. It quite surprised the leaders and their companions as well as Sona and Tsubaki except Zeus and Hermes, since they saw that they were not afraid of dying, and were even quite surprised by the tremendous bravery and strength of the mysticals, whom they once met. Like Issei Hyoudou. Ryu. Something tells me that's where those legendary warriors got to, he said mockingly, making everyone present angry. Office. You better shut up, you damn scum, since you are nothing more than a useless good for nothing, he said, making Ryu shut up. This is Hyoudou. Besides, you shouldn't talk like that, maybe you don't care if your brother dies. But before anyone else said anything they heard the war cries of the Spartans, thus turning back to the magic circle that projected the image, and saw how the Spartans tried to push back the Persians and the Chaos Brigade. Spartan 1. Chargein, he shouted while his brothers tried to push them. The mysticals. Is the best they have. He shouted as he pushed his shield. Spartan 2. Push. The Spartans would be gradually losing the ground in the battle, making the Persians and the brigade think that they had already won the victory, but at that point the Spartans decided to make their move. The mysticals. Now, he shouted, making everything stop. And suddenly the Spartans had pushed their enemies with their shields and then stabbed them with their spears, and before they could counterattack, they took cover again. Spartan 1. Charge. They repeated the movement again, beginning to recover because they didn't even lose at ground, pushing the Persians and the brigade back. Spartan 1. Leave no prisoners. The mysticals. No mercy. Everyone began to advance, killing all the Persians and members of the Chaos Brigade. Well, they only received slight cuts, but in that the mysticals did something epic for the Spartans, as well as for the leaders and companions who were at the meeting. The mysticals. Bring the bombs, he ordered while he blocked the attack of a fallen man. After shouting that, a Spartan left one of the houses while carrying a bomb on his back, while a small group covered him. Issei was in charge of eliminating all the Persians he could while they left the towers, and those who managed to advance were killed by his brothers, but then he sees how the sapper is surrounded while his brothers were trying to defend him. And then the chestnut man throws himself into the large number of Persians, knocking down almost all of them, starting to kill them one by one, making way for the sapper, and it was like that for a long time until who came to put it at the entrance of the first tower. The mysticals proceeded to light the fuse and went as far away as he could like his brothers. After a few seconds the left tower flew into pieces. The mysticals. Bring the other keg of gunpowder. At that time, another sapper came out of the same house with a keg of gunpowder. The mysticals was going to defend him, but he would be intercepted by a rather strange being with black clothes and a silver mask. Those beings were the immortals, the personal guard of the god king. Many of the remaining towers came out, beginning to fight with great ferocity against the Spartans. Issei tried to help his brothers in the battle until he was sent flying, causing a great blow. He dropped his sword. The brunette looked at the person responsible for that blow, encountering a huge demonic-looking being. The being began to attack very quickly, while Themistocles tried to defend himself with his shield, but the being hit the shield with his two swords, causing it to fly away. Spartan 1. General I shout, trying to help him, receiving a blow from the being, leaving him KO. The chestnut stood up and began to defend himself with his shield until, due to the creature's carelessness, Themistocles threw himself to the side, taking his sword and giving a quick cut to the being's neck, decapitating it. The Persians and the Chaos Brigade saw how they were killing their best weapon. They tried to retreat, but they heard a roar, turning quickly, watching the remaining towers collapse, and also watching a group of Spartans. Themistocles stood in front of the Immortals and the Chaos Brigade, while his brothers stood next to him. The Immortals ran against the Spartans trying to make them retreat, but the great warriors began to kill them as if nothing had happened, and all under the amazement of those who were in the meeting at the great bravery of the Spartans, but more so of Themistocles. Chapter 4. Spartan. Several Spartan warriors could be seen in a large hall accompanied by their families, although some were there to commemorate the warriors who had fallen fighting for the good of their loved ones, and Issei was watching all of this with a neutral look, although he also felt sad for the loss of many brothers and sisters in this fierce battle to protect his city. Espartano. For our king and the glorious fallen. Legendary02. Now who dare to send Xerxes? Spartan 3. Nothing and no one is going to stop us now, ha 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 ha. They all celebrated with great joy, but there were two who did not, which were King Leonidas and Themistocles, who remained serious watching the night sky decorated with several stars while thinking about the victory they had managed to achieve by pushing back the Persians and the Brigade of Chaos. Themistocles. Sir, today we defended the place with great success, only 15% of the city was affected by this attack. Leonidas. That is very good, Themistocles, but remember that the war is still going on, we must be together and alert for another similar attack. Themistocles. Yes, sir. Everyone was celebrating with great happiness until they see how lightning falls in front of Themistocles and Leonidas, creating a large curtain of dust that when it dissipated, Zeus could be seen next to Hermes, who had a smile for having seen the great courage and strength of the Spartans. Spartan 1. They are the gods Zeus and Hermes, he said, very amazed by the appearance of those two. Spartan 2. But what are they doing here? Zeus. Good fight today, King Leonidas, he said, approaching the aforementioned. Leonidas. Were the god Zeus watching us? Zeus. That's right, but. Themistocles. Did you prefer to observe us instead of coming to give us a little help? He said, making everyone look at the god of lightning. Zeus. Well, I was in a meeting and. Hermes. Zeus, how about you go straight to the point? I feel that if you continue talking you will only harm yourself more, the messenger of the god suggested, while he saw all the Spartans. Zeus. You're right, Hermes, he said, seeing a good point to stop talking about why he hadn't gone to help them. Well, Leonidas, Themistocles, the reason I came is because in 3 days there is going to be a meeting of factions, and you must attend. Themistocles. And why should we go to that meeting? He asked seriously and at the same time angry. Zeus. Since they saw the potential you have after having defeated the Persians and the Chaos Brigade, they want to make an alliance with you. Leonidas. I wonder how they found out about us, he said sarcastically, looking at Zeus. Zeus. Well then Themistocles. Apart from having a loose mouth and showing everything, he said, making the Spartans and Hermes laugh, while Zeus got angry at what he had said. Zeus. So if you are going or not? I asked annoyed. Leonidas. We will go to that meeting, and it is also a good opportunity for Themistocles to face his past. Themistocles. Excuse me, sir, but I prefer to stay here because there may be another attack. Leonidas. Themistocles, you cannot continue escaping from your past. If you continue like this it could affect you in the future. It is better to confront it and put an end to it than to wait for it to reach you and destroy everything you love and love most, he said wisely, making Themistocles think about it for a few minutes until he decided to go to the meeting. Issei. It's okay, my king. Leonidas. Very well, Zeus considers it a fact that we will go to the meeting. Zeus. Thank goodness, because if you didn't go to the meeting was going to go to you, ha 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 ha. Themistocles. So with any decision I made, the same thing would have come out? He asked, staring at Zeus. Zeus. Well, yeah. He said nervously. Themistocles. I'm going to have to hit you, Zeus, he said, slowly approaching him. Zeus. Better here and then here he died, he said, starting to run while being chased by Themistocles, the flight shouting at him that he will stop and face his destiny as a man. Hermes. I don't know why, but I feel that the meeting is going to be something interesting. Leonidas, he said with a nervous smile. Leonidas. I feel that way too, God Hermes, I feel that way too. They said while they saw how Themistocles began to beat Zeus while the others gave him support, shouting that he should hit him with this, that he should hit him with that he should hit him with the chair, etc. Well, he gladly hit him with what they asked of him or with what they gave him without knowing that all this was seen by a girl who made him laugh a lot. How Themistocles came to behave in that way, starting to think that it would be a good idea to do it to him. A visit at the meeting. Chapter 5. Human world Sparta 10:30 p.m. You could see how in the great and magnificent kingdom of Sparta, there was a great celebration for the victories that had been achieved in these weeks, that they have been at war. But there were two people who did not. They were celebrating. One of them was King Leonidas, who was on the balcony of his room, watching his people celebrate. The other person was Issei, who was on the outskirts of the kingdom sitting on the grass while he looked at the stars. The Issei Hyoudou was quite serious since tomorrow was going to be the meeting with the leaders of the factions, and that was something that really bothered him, just as he hated having in his head the idea of having to tolerate seeing the faces of the people who treated him badly and never gave him even the slightest thank you for having helped them and saved them from countless threats, and all just for allowing himself to be fooled by his hateful ex-brother. But he had to do it for his people, for his brothers had to be there and endure seeing the faces of those people he hates the most. But he just put that aside and proceeded to take a lyre out of a bag. He just proceeded to take a little air and then start playing the lyre being heard by the kingdom of Sparta. The Issei Hyoudou had gotten so deep into playing the lyre that he had closed his eyes without realizing that his brothers and sisters were watching him, even King Leonidas with his wife. It was true that for the Spartans music was not theirs, but when they saw the chestnut tree playing the lyre, they felt calm and began to let themselves be carried away by that melody. But among all of them, King Leonidas knew why he played it. He knew that it was what he felt in his heart and also the reason why his greatest and most faithful warrior was like this. The next day. It was an afternoon like any other in the Spartan kingdom. A group of Spartan warriors could be seen gathering outside the city while they were seen off by their brothers and sisters. Leonidas. We will return before nightfall, he said while looking at his queen. Note. Remind me what Leonidas' wife's name is. Kingdom. Of course, Spartan, take care. After saying that, a beam of light appeared, drawing everyone's attention. Everyone was on guard, except Issei and Leonidas. Everyone saw how the figure of a man began to be seen in that trail of light. Little by little it began to be seen. The appearance of that man revealing that he was no one more and no less than Apollo, the Greek god of the sun. When everyone saw who it was, they immediately lowered their weapons and knelt in front of him, who only gave a sigh and hit the ground not so hard to get everyone's attention. Apollo. You don't need to do that, so please get up, he said as the Spartans did as requested. Leonidas. God Apollo, what brings you here? Apollo. Well, I'm coming for you for the meeting with the alliance leaders. Themistocles. I thought Zeus was going to come for us, he said seriously. Apollo. Well, he's still traumatized after what you did to him. He said, remembering how his father kept himself locked in his room while he hurt. I'm not going to go to Sparta anymore. Issei. He deserved it, and he also decided to give me that information about the meeting after a battle, he said while crossing his arms. Leonidas. Okay, I think we've already wasted a lot of time here. How about we go to that meeting now? He asked, receiving a nod from both of them. Issei only proceeded to put on his helmet and then go to where his king and Apollo were transporting them to the meeting, without anyone realizing that among the bushes, there were many Persians who were prepared to attack the city of Sparta. Meanwhile, underworld meeting room, all the leaders of the alliance could be seen along with other leaders from other mythologies, as well as the Hyoudou family, Zeus with his brothers and children, Ophis, Vali's team, the clans Gremory, Citri, Phoenix, Ageres and Baal. They were all gathered to see what they could do against the new Chaos Brigade and their Persian allies. Shiva. And what are we waiting for? Indra. Yes, why don't we start the meeting once and for all? Xerxes. We are waiting for the eldest son of Zeus to begin the meeting. Indra. Can't we start with the meeting and have him report to you later? He said before seeing how the doors of the meeting opened, revealing Apollo with King Leonidas, Themistocles and a large group of Spartan warriors. Apollo. If you have problems with that, Indra, it would have been better if you didn't come. He said, bothering Indra, that he was going to proceed to hit him until Themistocles intervened. Themistocles. Go ahead, if you are ready to die now, show them, he said. It would be facing God. Zeus. Themistocles, calm down, he said, seeing how everyone present except the Spartans was amazed to see that. How about we continue with this meeting? He suggested in order to prevent that meeting from becoming Indra's funeral by provoking the greatest and strong of the Spartans. Chapter 6. The meeting had begun. The leaders of the alliance as well as the different cultures began to discuss the topic of the attacks of the Chaos Brigade as well as the Persians, but especially about the animal powers of Karina the Blade. Of the original Lucifer and Xerxes the god king of the Persians, everyone was very afraid of them, even Shiva who did not want to show it. Everyone wanted to talk about what they could do against such enemies, since whatever they did, whatever strategy they put in place, it didn't work against them, and in the end, it ended up favoring their enemies. When each one proposed a strategy, they asked their former partner Issei, better known now as the Mysticals, for his opinion or advice, but he only kept his staff crossed with his arms while he looked at them without interest. Every time they heard his silence or saw his gaze, disinterested as a sign that he did not care what would happen to them, they felt ashamed for treating him very badly in the past, except for Sona and Tsubaki, who only had a look of satisfaction, as did Zeus, his brothers and children. All the other gods of the other mythologies did not understand what was happening, and Shiva and Indra could only resist the urge to hit him for not speaking just like Ryu. The girls who once despised beat humiliated him tried to get closer to him so they could talk about normal things while the meeting was going on. The one who tried the most was Arena, but being very close to him, she only saw how the Issei Hyoudou he looked back as he took his sword, pulling it out a little as a sign of threat. The girls, seeing that, especially Arena, felt great sadness and regretted having killed and distanced their true hero love, but the damage had already been done, and there was no way to remedy it. The Hyoudou patriarchs also felt that way when they saw their son's behavior, since they were never with him, they never gave him attention or love, and that was something they truly regretted. Xerxes. Okay, it's more than clear that we can't do anything against them. Michael. That's right, each idea strategy favors them. Michael. And we can't do anything else to defend ourselves. Auden. But it seems that they can repel the attacks and push back the Persians and the brigade, he said, looking at the Spartans. How do they do it? Leonidas. With strategies, he said, taking a step forward. What the young Themistocles gives us, he said, looking at the aforementioned. Isaka. Is that true, Issei? He asked, seeing how the aforementioned remained silent. Do you think you can give us an idea to be able to defend ourselves? He asked again, receiving silence again, making the Yokai queen feel sad as she lost interest and the kindness of the Issei Hyoudou. Seraphol. Please tell us something, Issei, don't just stay silent, he said, the same, receiving silence, feeling the same as Yusaka. Leonidas. The Mysticals is not going to speak, he said in a serious manner, drawing everyone's attention unless I ask him to. Ryu. So he's a dog and you have the chain, he said mockingly. After saying that, he saw how his former younger brother stood in front of him while taking the handle of his sword and looked at him seriously, while Ryu just smiled arrogantly at that. Ryu. Wow, did I offend you, useless? He said, trying to make the Mysticals angry. Leonidas. The Mysticals, calm down, he's not worth it. Mr. Hyoudou. Why do you call him the Mysticals? His name is Issei. Issei Hyoudou, he said, already tired of hearing how they called his son about him. Leonidas. His name is the Mysticals, he decided that we would call him that. Mrs. Hyoudou. It's not true, my son. Zeus. With all due respect, Mrs. Hyoudou, but he stopped being her son many years ago, more specifically when he was just a child. Mrs. Hyoudou. But. Quetzalcoatl. I don't think we have deviated a little from the main topic. He said it would be while he was supported by the other gods. Indra. Look, human, I demand that you speak now, he said, raising his voice as he stood face to face with the Issei Hyoudou, who remained still. So you're not going to talk, well then I'll force you. After saying that, Indra grabbed him by the neck, but the Mysticals only grabbed him by the arm to proceed to knock him down, while putting his foot on his face and twisting his arm, causing him to start complaining about the pain, but that would be taken advantage of by Ryu, who tried to attack him. His back to his former younger brother, but before even hitting him, the Mysticals grabbed his shield with his free hand and hit Hyoudou in the pit of the stomach with the edge of the shield, knocking him to the ground. Ryu held his stomach, feeling great horrible pain. And then felt how the Mysticals put his sword on his neck, ready to kill him if he tried to do something. The Mysticals. Is there anyone else? He asked, seeing how everyone except his brothers was shocked by that since no one believed what happened. The Issei Hyoudou had very easily humiliated Indra and Ryu, as if they were just trash misery. The Mysticals was going to proceed to break Indra's arm and behead Ryu, but at that Leonidas only touched his shoulder, shaking his head, so without further ado, he let them go, letting them get up while he held his arm neck. The whole place was very tense to see that, so they decided to try to calm things down and continue with the meeting, but then there was an explosion, making everyone they became alert while a large screen of smoke rose in front of them, revealing the figure of 5 people, although the Alliance, the gods and the Spartans, already realized who they were. Chapter 7. The meeting room was trembling with fear, except for the Spartans and the Greek gods, who were serious but prepared to fight if necessary, plus they already knew who the people who were hiding in the dust were. The first one. The reaction had been Xerxes, who was covered by his aura of destruction as he prepared to attack, but out of nowhere a spear of dark energy passed by the side of his face, giving him a cut on the cheek, shocking everyone except the Greeks. Wow, Xerxes, without a doubt you have become very weak and clueless, Xerxes said the woman in an arrogant and mocking way. Azazel. Karina, I didn't think you would dare attack us at the beginning of our meeting, she said while the dust dissipated, revealing Karina and her company Cao Cao, Kacabiel, Loki and Xerxes. Karina. I just wanted to say hello, fake moo Lucifer, she said while she clenched her fists with great anger. Seraphol. Are you just doing this to claim Lucifer's position? I asked, quite annoyed. Karina. There Seraphol, you really think I'm doing this for my father's position, she said while cracking her knuckles. I'm doing this for justice. Bajuka. Justice. Karina. You false mouse have only created a great disaster throughout the underworld, and that disaster increased when he arrived, he said, pointing to the Serkyuutei. Seraphol. You're wrong, we have tried to keep the underworld intact and… Karina. Don't lie, damn it, screamed the super demon, increasing her power greatly, terrifying the biblical, Yokai and Asgardian factions in the underworld. Things get worse, meaningless arranged commitments, just to increase the population of the underworld. The lower class demons being humiliated and despised by those who call themselves superiors, and you do nothing, he said while Legia increasing his power, and the other factions do the same. That is why I make this war in order to eliminate this corrupt system, she said angrily, while looking at each leader seriously. The Mysticals. Wow, I'm surprised that you have such noble acts, the Spartan spoke, breaking the cold and tense atmosphere, but don't you think you're exaggerating with your measures of doing things? Karina. You, better than anyone, should understand why I do this, Issei Hyoudou, since you were the one who suffered the most because of these disgusting beings. He said, making the leaders and company except Zeus and company lower their heads in regret for what they did. Which they did even though Issei's ex-brother didn't care. The Mysticals. And what about the people who suffered thanks to this war of yours? He asked in a serious way, drawing everyone's attention. You killed thousands of innocents. Karina. For me they were not innocent, they were obstacles, and I would kill them again, she said without thinking about it. The Mysticals. Wow, for a moment I thought you were different from these idiots or your father, but I see I was wrong, she said, making Karina realize what she said. Karina. No wait, I didn't mean you made me say, she tried to say until she was interrupted by Xerxes. Xerxes. In war everything is valid, Spartan, she said in a serious and cold manner. Leonidas. If I'm wrong, you must be Xerxes, she said, seeing the god king. Xerxes. And you must be Leonidas. I am surprised to see how you address a god without the slightest respect. Leonidas. How cow. Well, we don't really come here to have fun. Zeus. So. The Cabial. We come here to entertain you. After saying that, a large group of creatures identical to the one that attacked the kingdom of Sparta appeared and began to massacre all the supernatural guards at the meeting, while the Spartans prepared their shields and took out their swords ready to fight. Karina only invoked a Meso, and he headed to attack King Leonidas, but just when his attack was going to impact, a sword intervened, blocking Karina's attack to make her retreat. Lucifer's daughter turned her gaze to the cause, seeing that it was Issei, who stood in a combat pose. Karina. Finally I'll know what you're capable of, Spartan, she said as she got into a fighting pose. The Mysticals. I always wanted to know your way of fighting, Lucifer, he said while he was ready to strike the first blow. But at that moment his brother walked past him to head at high speed against Karina, who was able to block a blow from the current Serkyuutei, as if it were nothing, seeing how he was in front of her with his armor on and with a big arrogant but confident smile. Disgusting and full of lust, something that made Karina feel great disgust towards the Hyoudou. Ryu. I myself will defeat you, Lucifer, and when I do I will make you my slave, he said, invoking the dragon-killing sword ready to stab Karina. Karina, upon hearing Ryu's words, felt great hatred and repulsion towards him, but at that moment she lowered her guard and had not noticed Ryu's sword, and when it was about to pierce her stomach, the Mysticals proceeded to hit Ryu in the face with his shield, throwing him to the ground and then giving him a strong kick in the ribs, completely breaking his armor, as well as his ribs, and sending him flying, impacting everyone due to that action except his brothers and Ray. Karina. Why did you do that? I asked, impressed by her action. The Mysticals. Maybe we are enemies, Karina. Lucifer, but he said to stand in front of her. I will always defend the freedom and rights of a woman. Karina was quite impressed upon hearing that, but she could also feel as if her heart was jumping with joy upon hearing those words coming from him. She did not understand why she felt that way. She was quite happy, and a blush had appeared on her cheeks, but thanks to his helmet could not be seen. The Mysticals. Besides, she said, taking the handle of his sword, I am your opponent, not him. After saying that, he tried to give a cut to Karina, who was able to block that attack with her Meso. Both had a smile on their faces as they began to struggle to see who gained more ground in the push of weapons, Espada and Meso, and all that being seen by the alliance leaders and Karina's allies, while the Spartans along with their king and god Zeus tried to drive back the beasts that were invading the meeting room. Chapter 8. The battle at the meeting had begun. The leaders were trying to push back Rizavum, and King Leonidas had a fervent battle against the god King Xerxes, while the soldiers of the king of Sparta tried to push back Rizavum's soldiers. And Cao, but for now we will focus on the most amazing battle that was present in the place. Karina and Issei alias the Mysticals fought with great strength, agility and ferocity, demonstrating their skills in hand-to-hand combat by blocking and evading the attacks of one and of each other, while they had big smiles. Karina. You are strong and skilled, she said, blocking the Spartan sword, but you still have a long way to go to be at my level. The Mysticals. Oh girl, you'll see who is the real person among us who needs training, she said with a slight smile, beginning to put strength in pushing Lucifer. Both began to exchange several attacks with their respective weapons. Karina with her dark energy Meso and Issei with his sword and shield, both fought in a masterful manner, making several of those present who were experts in swordsmanship see clearly. In an impressive way, the two of them fought, although Arena noticed something else, they were simply not fighting, they were dancing. The movements they made were as if they were dancing a waltz, and I noticed that because of the body movements. Especially the feet. Karina. I must admit something human, she said, getting trapped in the arms of Issei who was behind her, you are a quite interesting human. Issei. And you haven't seen anything yet, she said, giving it a whirl, separating it from hers. Arena watched that interaction with enormous pain in her chest. She could see how her lover was happy with someone else who wasn't her. That smile that was previously dedicated to her now belonged to someone else. She could see how both fighters continued with their dance, ignoring what was happening around them. But what ended up breaking Arena was seeing how they both ended up face to face a few centimeters away. While their breathing was somewhat agitated, Issei proceeded to release his shield to proceed to try to remove the shield. Mask of the Lucifer which hid its hand on the chestnut's cheek. Arena. Damn, how dare you. She screamed full of hatred, launching herself against Karina. Issei and Karina had lately realized the audacity of the reincarnated angel, seeing how she was a few centimeters away from them wielding a sword of light, making a vertical cut against the super demon who flew against a wall. Issei, who reacted by instinct, grabbed Arena's wrist and gave her a strong slap that knocked her to the ground, leaving her in shock because of her action that not even he understood why she had done it. Arena. Issei, why was it? Issei only proceeded to ignore her and run to where Lucifer had fallen, making Hyoudou feel a horrible pain in her chest, watching how the haber she loves walked away from her, just to see if Karina was okay, and the worst of all was that she was his rival, his enemy, that was what hurt him the most. Issei began to move some debris that was left from the wall to see Karina, who was sitting rubbing her head from the blow she hit against the wall. Karina. Okay, that was unexpected, she said before feeling Issei take her shoulders. Issei. Are you okay, Karina? I asked, worried about her. Karina. Don't worry, kid, I'm fine, she said, looking up, revealing her beauty. Issei had no words to describe Lucifer's beautiful face, her skin as white as snow, her shiny silver hair, her beautiful dark crimson eyes that shone like two stars of great purity on the edge of a dark galaxy. She was beautiful, no. Even that word was very short before her, she was like a goddess before him, not even the seraph Gabriel, nor Aphrodite could compare to her. Karina. Ah, why are you looking at me so much? Issei. You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in my life, he said, making Lucifer blush greatly. Your eyes are beautiful and bewitching. You are the most beautiful woman I have ever met in my entire life. Karina now did not know what to say. He was the first man who had caught her attention, the first man who did not have her, the first to say that she was the most beautiful woman in the universe. But in that she sees how Cao, Rizavum, Georges began to regroup with a small group of warriors who were still standing. She knew that it was time to leave. So without further ado, she gave the brunette a quick kiss on the corner of his lips and then did a somersault. Next to them. Cao. Well, our work ends here. Leonidas. What do you mean by that? Georges. Go to King Leonidas' house and you will know why we had decided to attack the meeting, she said with a mocking smile as he began to fade away along with his companions. Karina. I hope to see each other again very soon, Spartan warrior, she said, looking at Issei with a flirtatious smile, and I also hope that we have more time to continue playing. After saying that, they ended up disappearing as if they were just ghosts, leaving everyone confused, while the Spartans felt a very bad feeling about what could be waiting for them when they got home, but without further ado, they decided to return to Sparta, being taken by the leaders to find out what happened. Chapter 9. After the small meeting they had at the meeting, the leaders together with the Spartans proceeded to teleport to Sparta, finding several wounded, some dead, and several houses on fire. Now they understood the reason why Rizavum, Cao, Xerxes and Lucifer's heir attacked the meeting. It was just a distraction to mislead them of their true intentions, so without further ado, they began to help their friends and brothers who could barely stay awake. Without a doubt it was a more than guaranteed beating when it took them by surprise, but despite they defended themselves quite well. Leonidas. What is the situation? She asked looking at Issei. The Mysticals Issei. 90 wounded, 10 killed in combat, and they also say that hostages were taken. Leonidas. How many? The Mysticals Issei. Between 30 and 40 but maybe more, the majority were young women. Leonidas. Damn, she said with great anger, throwing her shield to the ground. I want you to make a rescue team right now. The Spartan won. But my king, if we go as a team, we will be seen by the Persians and their allies without having the opportunity to enter their camp. Leonidas. So what do you suggest? That we give up? That we let our people suffer at the hands of those Persians? Themistocles Issei. Sir, if you allow me, he said, drawing everyone's attention, I'll go alone for them. Leonidas. Are you sure, Themistocles? Themistocles Issei. Yes, it is also rumored that they were the ones who attacked Athena's temple and stole the swords forged by the goddess herself. It would also be good to go see if the rumors are true. Leonidas. I understand, take some warriors to help you. Themistocles Issei. No sir, if I do so you will not have enough help to carry out the second step of the escape plan. Leonidas. What do you mean? 5 minutes later. The leaders and company were gathered together, Leonidas and his Spartans watching and listening attentively to what seemed like a plan to intrude and escape from the camp of the Persians and their allies from the Chaos Brigade. Issei. Well, this is the Persian camp, the only option I have to enter is through the north wall where there is a gap that goes unnoticed by the archers. After that I will try to reach the prisoners area that is to the southeast. From the camp without attracting anyone's attention he began to explain, having the attention of his king, brothers and the leaders. After freeing them, I will try to take them to the west gate where you, my king, will be waiting for us with a group of our best warriors. At the moment of crossing, you will place explosive charges and we will blow up the bridge so that the Persians cannot cross. Issei finished explaining the plan. Leonidas. That's a great idea, Themistocles. Xerxes. Only I see a small problem in your plan, he said, drawing everyone's attention. What would happen if they noticed you? Well, you are very strong and agile with a sword, but I don't think you alone can take on an entire camp that looks more like a big town. The brunette only thought about those words. He had nothing that could argue against Xerxes' words. It was true that he was very strong, but even he had a limit that he had not yet discovered. Besides that, if he was distracted even for a moment, it was more than certain that he would receive a very serious stab wound that could cost him his life. I'll go with him, someone's voice sounded, drawing everyone's attention. Seeing that it was the same Issei Hyoudou, I'll go with him. Michael. Are you sure, Irina? Irina. Yes, also if there are only 2 of us there is still a possibility of entering and reaching the prisoner area without being discovered. Leonidas. Themistocles, do you agree with this? He asked, seeing the aforementioned who remained down for a few moments and then nodded reluctantly. Okay, then prepare yourselves. You will go to the enemy camp in half an hour. Issei. Understood, my king, he said to get up from the ground and go to an unknown direction for everyone while Irina watched him leave. 10 minutes later. Issei could be seen standing near a cliff looking at the horizon while thinking about a certain Lucifer and what he is doing now until his thoughts were interrupted by a certain reincarnated angel who stood right next to him. Irina. What memories, right? He said while Issei still turned his back to him. This reminds me of that time you took me to Kuo hillside. The view was so beautiful. Issei. It's a memory that I want to forget, he said, leaving the place until he was stopped by Irina. Irina. Tell me, maybe I already you don't care about me. Issei. I'd be lying if I told you that I care about you, he said while still turning his back on him. Irina. And all the moments we spent together don't matter anymore. Issei. That's what I should ask, Irina, but it doesn't matter anymore, so you better go prepare for the mission, she said, releasing herself from the grip to leave the place, leaving Hyoudou hurt by that action of the brunette. Chapter 10. Underworld Forest, unknown location. Sinpidia Sea. In the middle of the forest, a huge camp full of various enemies. The CAUK-3s were training, resting, eating, having fun and setting up surveillance on the perimeter. Right there is where we will focus now, more specifically in the eastern area. Among the trees you could see 2 silhouettes moving, being careful not to be seen by the enemy. These were Issei alias Themistocles and Issei Hyoudou, the ace of Michael. Issei. Okay, we're here, she said looking at the camp, or well, the walls of the camp. Irina. But it will be difficult to get past those guards, and since we will do it without attracting the attention of those inside the camp, it is impossible. Issei. Just focus on your part, right now Team A must be carrying out the distraction. On the west side of the camp. A group of 100 Spartans, 50 fallen, 50 demons, 50 angels, 70 Olympians, 60 Asgardians and 50 Akes could be seen gathering on the west side of the camp, ready to start the distraction. Despite that, their number was not so large as to be considered a threat. They only had to resist enough for Issei and Irina to do their part of the plan. After all, the main objective was search and rescue. Spartan 1. Are you ready? He asked, receiving a nod from his colleagues. Okay, let's start the first phase of our plan. After saying that, teammate proceeded to go against the enemy's walls, causing the guards to sound the warning horn, forcing most of the camp to respond to the call in order to defend their walls. The battle was soon heard over the air. I'm giving the green light to Issei and Arena to sneak to the foot of the Revis walls, assuming that it has a warning to enter. They can use magic circles or the angel's wings to enter, but it will be very dangerous since it would alert the enemies of their presence, plus it would take the fun out of rescue. Issei. There must be a gap here, he said, checking the wall. Arena. Issei, over here, she said, drawing the attention of the aforementioned. The Espartano went to where the angel was, seeing a small gap in the wall and on one side of it, what seemed to be some barrels of gunpowder that remained to be collected. Arena. Well, I fit in without any problem, but you. Issei. No problem, you just have to make the gap a little bigger, she said with an amused smile as she took out an arrow and set it on fire. 30 seconds later. On the other side of the wall you could see several Persians and renegades resting after a long training until a part of the wall blew into pieces, alerting them. That's when they saw Michael's ace and Leon's best warrior. They will go in for that egg with their weapons in hand ready to fight. Issei. Okay, let's see who is the best right hand of your leader, he said, starting to fight, leaving the angel behind. Arena. Hey, wait, he exclaimed, joining the battle. Both began to fight with great strength, agility and ferocity, slowly destroying the enemies, but every time they tried to destroy them, more and more always appeared. They did not understand where so many reinforcements were coming from, if it was assumed that almost all of the soldiers were from the camp had come as support to the west side of the wall. But then they heard what seemed like a drum directing their gaze to the side, seeing an archer hitting a drum with his fist, so without further ado Issei quickly and masterfully took out a bow, dodging two swords that were determined to decapitate him and then shoot an arrow in the direction of the drum, piercing the archer's heart from the back. Issei. No Hawkeye would be able to achieve such a shot, he said as he blocked an attack with his bow to decapitate his attacker with his sword. Thus they continued the battle, exterminating each of their opponents, seeing how their game decreased little by little until they finished off all their enemies in that part of the camp, proceeding to continue their movement through the camp to the center of it, where the prisoners in addition to the relics they had borrowed from Greece. On the west side. There were several corpses scattered on the field, both from the Alliance and from the renegades and Persians. Without a doubt this was a carnage, despite the fact that the enemy outnumbered them. The Spartans somehow managed to get the things were even, thus managing to buy time for Arena and Issei to achieve their objective. Without a doubt this was a unique rescue mission. But Issei and Arena. They were getting closer to their objective. Now they only had to go through one more obstacle, and that was the main rest area of the enemies, where you could see at least 100 enemies resting and training, and seeing that evading was going to be impossible, they opted for the second option. They had no choice but to fight. So without further ado they decided to come out of hiding, alerting the enemies who immediately went to fight. Issei. Okay, let's start the last step to get to the cages, he said while dodging an attack from a Persian and then taking a spear of light with his bare hand and redirecting it at a demon by sticking it in his chest. Thus they began to fight once again. Arena finished off her enemies thanks to her spears of light which she used to block and counterattack, while Issei attacked in an agile, fast, strong and merciless way, some without letting his enemies react to attack. They showed that they had made the mistake of having involved Spartan in this war, when in reality they had nothing to do with the problems it has with the Alliance. When they finished exterminating all the enemies that were in the way, they began to enter the cage area, seeing Spartan men, women and children inside huge cages. Espartano 1. Lord Themistocles came for us, he said, drawing the attention of all his fellow prisoners. Issei. Of course, a Spartan always takes care of his own, even if that means going to support them in hell itself literally. Boy 1. Without a doubt he is someone great. Arena. Don't worry, we'll get you out of here in a moment. Spartan 2. But there is still something else you should know, the relics that were stolen from the Temple of Greece. Issei. Do you know where they are? Spartan 3. Yes, they are right here next to each other on an altar. Issei. Okay, first let's collect the relics, and then we will free them, he said, starting to walk to the other side of the cage area. Arena decided to continue. They both walked for a couple of minutes until they managed to see how on an altar there were a pair of swords which Issei recognized very well, making him laugh at such insolence of the Persians and renegades of the Chaos Brigade. Issei. Haha, damn sons of bitches, of all the relics they had to steal Athena's swords. Arena. Athena's swords. She exclaimed in surprise since she knew very well what those swords were capable of. Issei only proceeded to take the swords, while several demons and Persians came out from all sides, which began to surround both of them, but in that Issei only proceeded to collide the edge of the swords with each other, causing several rays to shoot out, incinerating most of them. His enemies shocking everyone by such a display of power from those swords. Issei. Wow, so those rumors about these great swords weren't lies, he said, and then looked at the remaining enemies. Arena warns that we have already managed to complete phase 2 of the plan, it's time to move on to phase 3. Arena. See claro, she said, still shocked by what she saw. On the west side. You could see how teammate began to retreat little by little while they looked tired in addition to several corpses decorating the environment. They were going to continue fighting until a magical communication circle appeared in the ear of one of them. The angels. Angel? Irina, what's wrong? She asked, feeling a little tired. Irina. Phase 2 complete, moving on to Phase 3. I communicate while the clash of swords and the scream of the enemies could be heard in the background. Angel? Understood, she said to end the communication. Phase 2 complete, Phase 3 started, she exclaimed as everyone disappeared in a magic circle. The enemies did not understand what they were referring to until they saw how several lightning bolts appeared in the center of the camp, beginning to head at high speed to that place to prevent the prisoners from escaping. But Issei. He had already finished off the enemies who had come to the place a little earlier to try to stop them. Now he, along with Irina and his companions who had been prisoners, began to run through the camp towards the north side of the camp, with such to escape through the main door. They exterminated any enemy that crossed their path with great ease with the help of Athena's swords. When they reached the main door, Issei proceeded to knock it down thanks to the swords, giving permission to his Spartan companions to flee to the other side of the point where more Spartan warriors including Leonidas himself were waiting for them. Issei. Go with them, Hyoudou, he said, turning his back on the angel. Help them set the explosives. Irina. But Issei. Issei. It's an order, I will give you the time you need, he said, seeing the hordes of enemies leaving the camp. With nothing more to refute, Irina agreed to the order of the chestnut tree, which began to fight with great ferocity and courage, killing a large number of enemies, while the few who managed to pass were killed by the Spartan warriors who guarded the bridge without a doubt. A great defense against a large number of enemies, while the others put the barrels of gunpowder under the bridge to blow it up. After a few minutes of fighting, the Spartans were ready to blow up the bridge. Leonidas. The mysticals, he shouted, calling to the aforementioned who was on the other side of the bridge, get out of there. The chestnut only gave one last special attack with his swords and then ran across the bridge, crossing it before it exploded, giving the Spartans time to disappear through the forest with their mission accomplished, leaving behind some defeated Persians and renegades from the Brigade of Chaos. Chapter 11. After having managed to complete his rescue mission and recover Athena's swords, Issei Themistocles was leading the large group of Spartan warriors who were watching their surroundings to make sure they were not ambushed by Rizovim's or Xerxes' men, while the supernatural beings were covering the rear, but Irina was more focused on observing Issei than standing guard. They walked for a little more than half an hour until they managed to leave the great forest, managing to reach the capital of the underworld, the city of Lilith, where now they would also be sure that they would meet with the leaders about a matter that Zeus had to deal with. Issei Themistocles. So this is where Zeus summoned us, he said, seeing a large building from which several noble demons came out. Leonidas. That's right, Themistocles, it seems that what he doesn't have to say is something extremely serious about meeting us here, he said, entering the place with Issei Themistocles and Irina, who couldn't stop looking at the Spartan warrior. She wanted to talk to him, she wanted to make up for all the time she lost because of her stupidity, so without further ado, she decided to speed up her pace to take Issei's hand to stop him and be able to talk to him. But before even touching his hand, the doors of the main hall had opened, revealing the leaders of the alliance with the Greek gods, as well as the dragon gods, as well as the Gremari Sin Ryu and Citri entourage. Leonidas. Great god Zeus, we have arrived as he requested, he said, bowing next to Issei. Issei Themistocles. What did Zeus want to inform us? Shiva. I wonder the same thing, Zeus. Zeus. Well, you surely remember Medusa, right? He said, making everyone nod and have a slight shiver except Issei, as well as showing an image of her. Agreed. Of course we remember her, or do you think she's going to forget the day that crazy woman turned me into a statue for a week? Complained I, remembering the day she went to Medusa's lair to try to force her to be her wife. Poseidon. I still can't believe that Medusa's ability would evolve to that degree. Issei. It doesn't surprise me, after all she is capable of turning every living being into stone. Isaka. But there is something I still don't understand. What does she have to do with this meeting? Zeus. What happened is that the Chaos Brigade and Xerxes' army managed to capture her, she said in a serious way, terrifying everyone present except Leonidas and Issei Themistocles. Xerxes. If the Chaos Brigade and their allies have Medusa on their side, then this war will be more difficult to win. Azazel. But how did they manage to capture Medusa if just going to her territory is suicide? Apollo. Athena's swords weren't the only relics they stole. Shiva. You're saying they stole more relics? Hades. They surely used Medusa's shield to capture her. Gabriel. Medusa's shield. Athena. He who carries that shield will be immune to Medusa's magic, in addition to also providing the same ability. Enemu. And any idea where they are now? Zeus. Send Hermes to travel both the human and supernatural worlds, keep in mind that he will let us know as soon as possible. Quetzalcoatl. Then the only thing left is to prepare for the battle, he said in a serious manner while he crossed his arms. Zeus. That's right, so without further ado I think it's time to end this meeting, he said as he stood up from his seat. Isaka. I'm afraid there is one more thing to deal with, Zeus Dono. Xerxes. Yusaka-san is right, Zeus, he said, supporting the Yakai. Zeus. What topic do you want to talk about? Azazel. We want Issei to join the anti-terrorism group as well as become a servant of the Grimoire clan, he said, being supported by the other leaders except for Quetzalcoatl, while Riaz took out some pawn pieces that previously belonged to Issei. Leonidas. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid that won't be possible. Isaka. And why does King Leonidas say it? Leonidas. He would not be interested in joining you, besides the fact that he already has his duties with our people. Sona. King Leonidas is right, plus Issei has no reason to be with the anti-terrorism group. Tsubaki. It's very true. Serafal. And why don't we let Issei-kun decide? After all, that is what you think, and surely Issei-kun thinks differently, right? Issei Themysticals. Mau Leviathan is right, he said, standing up from his place, saddening the older Citri for addressing him by his title and not his name, and my response to your request is a no, he said, shocking everyone because of that. Enemu? But why not? Issei. Why is my duty and loyalty to the Greek faction and Sparta, not to you? He said seriously while he turned his back to them. Riaz. That's what you're wrong, he said while holding him by the shoulder. Your loyalty and duty is with me, since I was the one who saved you that night when Raynor almost killed you. Issei. My debt to you was settled a long time ago, Grimoire, so I no longer owe you anything, he said as he let go of Riaz's grip. I also remind you that the only reason you saved me was to be with Issei Hyoudou, so don't say again that you saved me, you just used me like the rest of the hypocrites here, he said, referring to the alliance without counting the Aztec and Greek faction. Everyone remained with their mouths closed upon hearing the harsh and cold words of the ex-Hyoudou, while the girls who were interested in him alone felt great pain and emptiness in their hearts upon hearing those words, as it let them see why they were so stupid. For having left him for a viper as despicable as Issei Hyoudou, having already made things clear, Issei and Leonidas along with the Greek gods and Quetzalcoatl proceeded to withdraw from the meeting room, leaving the alliance, who tried to devise a plan to have Issei back with them. Chapter 12. In one of the demonic towns outside the capital Lilith, great chaos could be seen invading the entire town, and all because of a fierce battle that was taking place between the Alliance and the Chaos Brigade. Both sides clashed with each other, creating great chaos. In what was previously a quiet and prosperous town, but for now we will be located in the center of the fortress built by the Chaos Brigade, where the fearsome jellyfish was already chained to a kind of machine that was draining its energy, while Xerxes, Karina, Cao Cao, Kakabiel and Loki. Medusa. Damn, I swear I'm going to make you pay for this, he said, trying to break his bonds. Xerxes. You better save your energy, Medusa, he said as he watched her continue trying to free herself from it. Loki. Hey, the Alliance troops are accumulating in a single point, he said, watching the combat. Cao Cao. Well, how about you approve the machine? He said with a somewhat evil smile. Karina. Our troops are there too. Loki. Well, what a shame, they will suffer the same fate. Karina. You must be kidding me, she said, annoyed. Xerxes. A sacrifice that we are willing to pay for victory, she said as she lightly caressed Medusa's hair. Karina. Cao Cao, do you agree with this? That you weren't someone of honor? Cao Cao. I'm sorry, Karina, but in war everything is fair, she said as if nothing had happened. Karina. I can't believe it. Xerxes. Are you with us or with them? I asked, receiving only silence from Lucifer. I thought so. Activate the Cao Cao machine. At that, Cao Cao proceeded to activate the machine, causing Medusa to be sunk by a large amount of steam, and then feel how her energy was taken away from her, giving a loud cry of pain, while the machine shot a green shot into the sky and then hit the field of battle, turning the Alliance troops and the Brigade troops into stone, causing a big smile in Xerxes, Loki and Cao Cao, and enormous displeasure in Karina. But the Alliance. From their side of the field they saw everything that was happening, being shocked to see the way in which the Chaos Brigade used the power of Medusa without caring that their own men were on the field at the mercy of Medusa's power. Xerxes. This is really bad, we have to find a way to get to Medusa now. Auden. Impossible, Karina's forces and her allies can keep us at bay right at the mercy of Medusa's power. Isaka. But there must be some way for us to move forward. Serafal. Unless we manage to destroy the cannons they have in the ruins to the southwest, only then could we gain a little more ground. Lykel. Just a little, it's not enough. Azazel. Maybe not for us, but there is enough time for a group to get into the Chaos Brigade fortress. Gabriel. Okay, the question is who will be the one to destroy those cannons? He said, receiving silence from everyone since the cannons themselves were protected by a large number of enemies. Leonidas. I think I know who could get to those cannons and destroy them. At the camp 10 minutes later, Issei Themysticals was watching the battlefield, watching how several of his Spartan brothers were turned to stone while he listened to everything his king was telling him. Leonidas. It's the only way to even out the situation a little, so I need you to destroy those cannons, he said, waiting for his warrior's response. Issei Themistocles. I will do it, sir, but I need you to cover me by drawing the attention of the enemies so that I can reach those cannons. Leonidas. We will do what we can. Issei Themistocles. I will go to my position, he said, going to his place. Everyone was ready for the plan, so without further ado, the alliance troops began to fire towards the area where the huge energy spheres that those cannons fired came from, while Issei Themistocles proceeded to run stealthily towards the area of the enemy cannons. While his Spartan brothers and the alliance tried to give him the opportunity to get closer without them realizing it. Dibba. You think I managed to get there, he said while taking some wounded people with Asia. Xerxes. It has to work or else no one will leave here alive, he said, while throwing a sphere of destruction to where the enormous magical spheres came from. But Issei. He had reached where the cannons were, seeing that they were guarded by several enemy warriors, but upon seeing how several of his brothers succumbed because of them, he proceeded to come out of his hiding place with the intention of killing them. The first enemy group reacted too late to Issei's presence when he managed to decapitate most of them as if nothing had happened, and then started a fight with the largest ones, four to be more exact, where it almost seemed that they had the advantage in the fight, until he managed to block an attack from one of them and then hit him with a headbutt, stunning him, and evade a thrust from another, causing him to hit another of the remaining giants and proceed to decapitate him. He stabbed the third with his sword in the chest and then kicked him, and he cut the last one in half as if it were nothing and then proceeded to explode the cannon. Issei Themistocles. One less, he said, and then proceeded to dodge some arrows coming from the second group. Issei proceeded to cover himself with his shield and then try to approach them, but he never expected them to direct the cannon at him, so without further ado, he jumped to the side, dodging the attack that raised a large amount of smoke which was used by the Spartan. To sneak and get to where the other group of enemies was, eliminating them easily and then exploding the cannon, giving way to the troops. Leonidas. Charge, he ordered, making the Spartans and the alliance come out of the trenches to fight the enemies. The battlefield was once again filled with large amounts of troops from both sides, in addition to the trail of green light, along with Medusa's screams of pain once again becoming present, turning the allies like enemies into stone. Issei, without further ado, he proceeded to leave the hidden area of the cannons, joining the battle, helping his allies reach the Chaos Brigade's fortress in, although it seemed that things were turning against them, thanks to the brigade using the powers of Medusa to keep them at bay. Chapter 13. Issei, along with a group of Spartans, had managed to enter the enemy fortress, seeing a large number of enemies coming out without pause onto the battlefield to fight the alliance. One would think that that would be very bad, but in reality, it was the perfect moment for them. Since this way they could go through the entire place until they reached the central field where they had Medusa imprisoned feeding the enemy machine. In the central field, many enemies could be seen surrounding a gigantic machine as if they were protecting it, which every certain number of times shot a huge trail of green light into the sky, which traveled through the clouds and then hit the field. Battle turning both allies and enemies into stones, and all this being seen by Rizavum, Xerxes, Cacabeal and Loki, who had a huge smile while Cao and Karina only had a very serious look, since this was something they did not approve of, but that in the end, they had no opinion to oppose this barbarity. Rizavum. Hahaha, without a doubt today's victory will decide the future of the factions, he said, watching how the alliance withdrew little by little. Xerxes. This is certainly splendid. Cacabeal. Well, since we know how today's battle will end, how about we return to our kingdom to plan the next attack? Cow. You shouldn't declare victory before your time, Crow. Karina. The result you expect can change at the last moment. Loki. Unfortunately for the factions this time that luck is not going to happen, he said while caressing Medusa's cheek. Beautiful truth, after all, you are going to make sure that it is so. Medusa. Damn sons of bitches, I swear you're going to pay for this humiliation. Rizavum. Keep dreaming about it, darling, he said as he watched smoke coming out of the grates beneath Medusa, causing her to scream in pain, while another pillar of light shot into the sky. There's more to do, I propose that we retire. Xerxes. Crimson, he said, drawing the attention of the aforementioned, revealing that he was a Persian of great size and muscularity, who was carrying a huge silver sword and a shield with a symbol of an eye. You are in charge of ensuring today's victory. Crimson. I am certain, King Xerxes, that his enemies will be crushed by the end of the day. Just like that, Xerxes and company left in a magic circle, entrusting victory to the Persian general, without knowing that they were making a very serious mistake. But Issei. He and his group of warriors had arrived at a huge courtyard where you could see wooden towers and many enemies guarding the place. They began to analyze the place in search of a secondary path so they could avoid the battle to arrive with all their might. The possible energy for the final conflict, but unfortunately for them they had to go head on, attacking and killing all the enemies they could, instead of taking a secondary path to get out of there. Issei Themistocles. Okay, are you all ready? He said. I asked, looking at his companions who nodded. Just like that, the great warrior proceeded to take out of his bag a small vase that had a rope coming out of it. He took 2 rocks and collided them together, creating a spark that lit the rope and then took it, waiting for the perfect moment to throw it. When the rope was about to be completely consumed, he threw it, exploding among several Persian and brigade soldiers, alerting everyone. Issei, without wasting time, threw another small vase which exploded near one of the towers, which collapsed, crushing many enemies. There the group of warriors came out who began to confront and kill the enemies, opening the way for Issei, who approached the second tower, managing to avoid the arrows that they launched. Issei: "Okay, without a doubt these things work better than I expected," he said, lighting another vase and placing them at the base of the tower. After doing that, he proceeded to move away from the tower before it exploded, collapsing quickly and creating a passage near the door. But before crossing, he had to take care of the last tower that was missing, although of course at the time of causing the second explosion, I'd draw unwanted attention to them. In the central courtyard, Crimson watched the smoke coming out very carefully. He knew that this was going to cause a lot of problems, so he had to fix it as soon as possible to ensure victory. So without further ado, he proceeded to redirect Medusa's magic so that it will now impact against the north patio. Back with our protagonist. He was surrounded by many enemies, but that was not an impediment for him, since anyone who dared to approach him would suffer the wrath of his swords, moving them with great mastery, killing one enemy after another in a manner masterful. But then he saw how Medusa's magic hit one side of the patio, turning many enemies into rock. So without further ado, he used the magic of Athena's swords, clashing his swords against each other, unleashing many lightning bolts around him, charring his enemies. And then go to the last tower and proceed to collapse it using its strength, causing it to fall on many enemies. Issei: "Themysticals. Towers knocked down, clear path," he said, drawing the attention of his companions. The Spartan warriors began to make their way through the enemies, killing everyone who got in their way or destroying the statues that were in the way, reaching the door of the great hall to proceed to hit it hard to try to knock it down, since they saw how the magic of Medusa was slowly approaching them. So without further ado, Issei proceeded to gain a little momentum and then run towards the door, knocking it down with an attack, giving way to his companions before they were turned into stones. Warrior 1. "Not bad, sir," he said, helping our carrier get up. But then they see that they are surrounded by several archers, in addition to many warriors from both the brigade and the Persians, beginning to surround them, ready to kill them, making the warriors hit their shields with their swords ready for combat, even knowing that they are outnumbered, demonstrating that they still carry in their veins the blood of the legendary 300, who managed to unite Greece in ancient times. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown in left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.